before you obviously testified quite a bit this afternoon, and there's some areas I want to wade into, but what I've done to try to expedite this is kind of broken it up in some areas of inquiry. And first I want to ask you, sir, and you've already talked about this a little bit, but I want to go a little bit more in depth. So you're the lead detective on this case, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And according to your testimony, one of the things that the lead detective does is you're kind of the guy, you're the man, right?
That's correct, yes.
You're the boss of the case, you're the decision maker, you hand out assignments, you evaluate everything, you look at everything, and you probably know everything as good as the lawyers do.
I would say maybe manager of the case. I wouldn't say boss of the case.
Okay, fair enough. And in some cases, obviously, you have to spend more time than others. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes, that's correct.
This is probably one of those cases that I think your police reports, it has it all styled, death investigation. It's probably one of these cases you spent quite a bit of time on.
I spent a long time on this case, yes.
You spent hours and spent maybe a month or more, I guess, on it, didn't you?
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, you traveled out to Fountain Run to interview Kaylee, interviewed tons of witnesses, many of whom won't even testify in this trial, correct?
Yeah, that's not my decision.
Well, I understand, but there's more witnesses, or more potential witnesses, I should say, that were interviewed or talked to about various aspects of this than what we've seen here over the last couple of days.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So in your month-long or 2-month-long investigation, where you spent multiple hours on this, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, do you have an estimate how much time you? What the other witness's statement that you agree with?
Are we still talking about 3 separate altercations?
And I'm talking about number 2 right now.
Okay, number 2 altercation, according to statements, some of the statements, she had a knife. Her statement is she was in a headlock. So depending on which statement we're listening to would be dependent upon who's the aggressor.
Okay. And then in the bedroom, there's really no dispute that she gets punched or smacked or struck or hit somewhere about the head, right?
That's correct.
I mean, she says so.
That's correct.
Brittany sees it. Dennis doesn't see it, though.
That's correct.
But he's in the bedroom, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
And, of course, as we all know, he's the most intoxicated of the 3.
That's correct.
All right. And with respect to Kaylee's drinking, we heard several interviews, some right after this happened up until, a couple of days later. And as you indicated at the interviews at the Bowling Green Police Department, you were asking her about her drinking, and you even noticed that, I smell it, but, you don't appear to be drunk.
That's correct.
Okay. So at no time when you dealt with Kaylee did she appear to be manifestly under the influence where she didn't know what was going on or was falling down or about to pass out, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So we can all agree there's no dispute. There's multiple altercations. There's multiple different scenes within that house, right?
Yeah, I think if we're breaking it down, then there would also be the 4th and final altercation, yes.
All right. Well, let me get to that. And just to back up, just make sure we're there. We got the bathroom, then we got the throwing in the main part of the house, we got the bedroom scene, and then we got the final altercation you just referred to where Houston gets stabbed.
So the garage, the kitchen, the bedroom, and then the final, yes.
In your review of the facts, the crime scene, the witness statements, that's what you believe actually happened, right?
It's a fluid situation, so it's not quite that easy, but if you're trying to break it down, I believe there would have been 4 altercations, yes.
Okay. Now let's go back to Kaylee and what she was doing. You had a conversation with this Ryan fellow at the Bowling Green Police Department within hours after this, right?
That's correct.
Really, there's no dispute that she was getting ready to leave him, right?
Yes.
You found nothing to contradict that?
No, I think he'd wired her some money so she could leave.
And you verified that yourself?
That's correct.
He, in fact, did verify or send her money. I think she said $1,000.
Yes, sir.
And I think you also noticed that Friday was the date that she was going to try to get out, right?
That's what she said, yes.
Okay. But nothing to dispute that, right?
No.
All right. So, based on everything that you've looked at, this is not an instance where we have some kind of disputed fact where Kaylee, she just got, pardon my language, she just got pissed off. She said, I'm going to get this guy, got the knife. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
And just went over to him and said, you're going to quit this, and just stabbed him. We have nothing like that at all, do we?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that.
You're not sure? Well, let me ask you this. If you're not sure, what fact would you be relying upon that would suggest that maybe it did happen like that?
Based upon the scene, this was a fluid situation. If we're looking at the final altercation, as she pulls away from Brittany at the door, I could kind of point it out on the picture if you like,
Right.
but as she pulls away from Brittany at the living room kitchen door, then she has to go through the kitchen to go to the bedroom. And that path is when she grabs a knife. Now, if we back up to where she pulls away from Brittany, there's a back door within feet. So if you pass the back door where you could have left if you're in fear, and you grab a knife and you go back to him, I can't clearly say that she didn't go there with the intent to cause harm. Now, did she go there with the intent to kill him? If you're asking my opinion, that is no, based upon all the statements. However, it is not for me to determine that. The problem is with this scene is she was feet from the door and she went past Brittany, past the door of escape, grabbed the knife, and back to the bedroom.
But just so that we're clear, though, and this is why I asked you earlier, the relative distance between where she would have obtained that knife to where the actual stabbing occurred, it's not that far of a distance, right?
Well, when the final altercation happened and when Brittany was pulling her out, she was standing beside of the back door. The back door is right there beside of where Brittany said she
Right.
used the wall to pull away. That's the back door.
Right.
So the back door was there. There was her way of escape if she was in fear.
But at that point, though, let me back you up a little bit. If your chronology is correct, that prior to the fourth and final scene where Houston gets stabbed, the third scene was the bedroom, and that's where she gets hit. That's undisputed, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And at that point, she didn't have her TV, right?
They were in the process of getting the TV.
They were arguing over that TV.
Yes, that's correct.
And it's at the end of the third point in the chronology where Brittany has pulled her back, right?
That's correct.
And Brittany has eyes off her. I think she testified for about 30 seconds. Do you remember that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there's that short period of time, that short window where nobody's seeing what Kaylee does, right?
Well, from the time she leaves Brittany to the time she gets to the door, there's that walk through the kitchen that no one sees. That's correct.
Right. And again, if your chronology is correct, number 4, she's in that kitchen area. She has armed herself with a knife. And here's what I was trying to ask you earlier. You don't have evidence that she armed herself with that knife, took however many steps over, went into the bedroom, and confronted Houston at around the TV. You have nothing to support that, right?
To support that she went in with a knife? I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me ask you again. On the fourth and final point of the chronology where Houston gets stabbed,
Yes.
we agree it happened right there around the doorway in the bedroom, right?
Yes.
We know that Kaylee, at that point, she has armed herself with the knife in the kitchen, right?
That's correct.
We agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Brittany has eyes off Kaylee for 30 seconds, right?
That's correct.
And we have no idea what Dennis is doing because I don't think he knows what he's doing, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So we have Kaylee's statement. We've got physical evidence. Now here's my question. So she arms herself with the knife. You don't have any evidence that she armed herself with the knife and she went into where Houston was being restrained by DJ and went over, and that's where the altercation happened. We have no evidence to support that, right?
Are you talking about the location of the
The
stabbing?
location of the stabbing.
statements is what supports where the stabbing happened.
Right.
I think I'm all, the statements
That's
support.
what I'm asking.
Yes, the statements show that the stabbing occurred in the bedroom, or at the doorway.
The doorway. Right.
Correct.
And the doorway goes into the kitchen, right?
Correct.
Which is where Kaylee was, which is where she got the knife, right?
As she was coming through the kitchen, she got the knife, yes.
Right. And we also know from statements that at that point, Brittany had just pulled Kaylee out, right?
Yes.
And we also know that DJ was trying to restrain Houston, right?
Correct.
And he didn't succeed in restraining him, right?
That was his statement, yes.
In fact, Houston broke free, right?
That was his statement. Mm-hmm.
And charged. Is that right?
I can't answer that for certain.
Based on the evidence that you see as the investigator, the trajectory of the stab wound, Houston broke free. We don't dispute that, right?
That's correct.
And we don't dispute that he was stabbed right there in front of that door, right?
That's correct.
So again, back to my original question that apparently I'm having a hard time asking here. You don't have any evidence that Houston had calmed down at that point. He was saying, all right, let's just get Kaylee's TV. And Kaylee got the knife, came in there mad as you know what, with the knife, and came up to him. We have no evidence that that happened, right?
I guess if you're asking, I cannot determine was Houston running towards her. I cannot tell you that for certain. I cannot tell you was he walking towards her. I cannot tell you was he standing in the doorway. I cannot for certain 100% tell you that. What I can tell you 100% for certain is when she pulled away from Brittany, she was standing beside of the back door. And if she was in fear, she passed the back door, went and through the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and went towards where Houston was.
Are you suggesting that Kaylee Whitehall had an absolute duty under the law to leave that residence at that point? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, that's not for me to determine. I'm just saying, you're asking me what the scene
Right.
and what I believe the facts say.
Sure.
I believe the facts, along with the statements, say that if she was in fear, as much as she said she was much closer to her route of escape than she was to break free from Brittany, go through the kitchen, grab a knife, and go to Houston. But that's not for me to determine if she has to retreat.
Sure. Well, let me ask you about the Fountain Run interview, because I think you all broached that subject. And when she says that, yeah, she had the knife, she told you, did she not, that she didn't know what Houston was going to do. She didn't know she was coming for him. She didn't want her hair to be grabbed again. Do you remember her saying that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And again, fluid situation, correct?
Yes.
I mean, we're not talking about minutes passing here. This is literally seconds, right?
I'm not for sure, but yes, probably.
I'm asking you, based as the lead investigator, you know all these witness statements, you've seen the scene evidence. We know that this all happened pretty fast. There's really not a big dispute about that. There wasn't a cooling off period.
That's correct.
Garage, middle of the house, bedroom, kitchen. It all happened very quickly, right?
Yeah, within a short period of time,
Short
yes.
period of time. So Kaylee is at some point in the kitchen, and we know that the stabbing of Houston, based on the evidence you collected, it wasn't over by the TV, was it?
No, I don't believe so.
In fact, the area from the TV to that door, based on the pictures, it's several feet, right?
Yeah, it's across the room, yes.
That's several feet that Houston Johnson had to advance then, correct?
I can't answer that for certain. I don't know whether he was charging, running, or standing. I don't know.
Well, we do know because you were asking Kaylee at the Fountain Run interview, actually letting her know after the autopsy that it appeared based on the angle that it looked to you like he was charging.
I know by the angle that it did not occur like this.
And that is because, do you know how tall she is?
Not exactly, no.
Okay. Any reason to disagree that she's 5 feet 6 inches tall?
No reason to disagree.
And again, per my opening, at the time of his death, Houston was actually 75 inches, 6 feet 3 inches tall, right?
That sounds correct.
Okay. So he's almost a foot taller than Kaylee, right?
Close.
Okay. So it really is important how she's holding that knife and where they make impact. Would you agree with that?
I guess in the fact that the importance from the statements and the scene and the wound, the importance is we know that it didn't happen in the backward motion when she was in a headlock. We know that didn't happen.
Right.
But from the wound, from the scene, I can't say at the time that the stabbing occurred, was he standing, walking, running? I can't answer that.
Right. And that's probably something we can talk to the medical examiner about. But let me just ask you, from your own knowledge about it, do you believe that we have evidence that the stab wound was inflicted from an upward angle?
I believe that's beyond my area of expertise. That would be a medical examiner question.
So you don't have any knowledge from the case based on the autopsy findings and everything that you've looked at in determining from your own standpoint, was it upward or downward? You don't have any of that?
I believe what I can say for certain is that it didn't happen in the backward motion, and it happened when they were facing each other with the knife up. It didn't happen with the knife down, because with her height, it would have been a lower stab wound. So the knife had to be up. We do know that. Now, was it in the middle of the beginning part of a swing, the end part of a swing? I can't answer that.
Right. And again, 5'6" to 6'3", that's what, 9 inches taller, right?
Sounds correct.
And he was actually struck just right above his heart. You know that, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And there's also no dispute that immediately after that happened, the arguing and bickering continued, right?
I believe for a short period of time, yes.
At least momentarily.
That's correct.
I mean, he didn't collapse immediately.
That's correct.
DJ gets him, puts him in the bathroom. They're yelling, the iron gets thrown, right?
That's correct.
And then everybody realizes this is bad and he's hurt, right?
That's correct.
No dispute about that?
None.
Okay. I want to read you something real quickly here. Of course, the judge, at the opening of this case, he read the indictment, which is fairly short. It just says that on 10 September 2015, Warren County above-named defendant, Kaylee, committed the crime of reckless homicide when, with recklessness, she caused the death of Houston Johnson, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Okay? And you're familiar with the charge of reckless homicide, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Does that sound consistent with what the judge read to you?
Yes, sir.
Now, on recklessness, would you agree that a person commits recklessness if they fail to perceive a substantial and unjustifiable risk? Do you know that one way or the other? In your capacity as a police officer dealing with mental states?
I don't know what she was perceiving at that time.
Okay. Well, let's talk about one. If in fact Kaylee was being choked and hair pulled and punched in the face and hit and all these other things that happened in this flurry, all right, and if in fact Houston broke free from Mr. Melbourne and charged at her while Kaylee had a knife in her hand, okay, based on the evidence that we've collected, if all that happened, at that point, can you say, as a police officer, that that was unjustified?
I can't say that he was charging her. I cannot say that for fact. If you're asking me, did I think that she intentionally killed Houston Johnson,
Right.
The answer is no.
You don't believe that?
If you're asking me, do I believe recklessly she passed her area of escape, went around Brittany, grabbed a knife, and went at Houston, do I believe she recklessly killed him? Yes. That's why we're here. I don't believe she intentionally killed him.
Let me ask you this, Detective. I believe it was in November of 2015, you testified before the grand jury in this case.
That would have been November the 18th.
And on that particular date, you were rather candid in your testimony toward the end. And in fact, you told the grand jury that you believe, based on the evidence, that Houston Johnson was the aggressor and Kaylee Whitehall was defending herself. Do you remember saying that?
Depending on which part of the altercation, yes, I said that.
Well, I don't know what you mean by depending upon which part of the altercation. You did testify before the grand jury, correct?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
And you've reviewed that prior to coming to court, I presume?
Yes, I have.
You watched it. It's pretty long for a grand jury,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And at one point in the proceeding, you mentioned the belief that Houston was charging. Do you remember saying that?
I remember that was one of the statements, yes.
Okay. And do you also remember saying that based on everything that you saw, you felt, as the lead investigator, that Houston was the aggressor that night and Kaylee Whitehall was defending herself? You remember making that statement?
Yes, during portions of the altercation, I do believe he was the aggressor.
Let me ask you this. Immediately after this happened, Kaylee gives her first interview with Bowman.